Welcome to High-End Client Acquisition Podcast. My name is Marian. I'm your host, and this show is here to teach you how to attract your dream clients on autopilot in 30 days or less. Each week, I bring you a guest or a strategy that can help you take your business to the next level. Don't forget, you can always get the episodes in your inbox or messenger at clientacquisitionpodcast.com. Tom, so first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today. We have some insanely cool questions for you. I know you love this topic, and this is actually what you've been talking in your book about. Heard you speak a couple of times. So again, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Marian, I am thrilled to be here and glad things collided here and we got to be in the same place at the same time.
100%. So you have this awesome model of, we are here at the PodFest event where everybody's kind of learning how to grow their own platform, their own podcast, their own show, whatever, if it's a YouTube show, if it's a podcast, just an audio, whatever. But you have this model that you're actually going on other people's podcasts, on other people's shows, because they've already built the audience. So, and I love this model. Do you mind giving us a little bit of a story on how did you come up with your own process and why, basically why?
Okay, well, I think the idea of other people's platforms, people think about other people's money, right? Using other people's money because it's so powerful with leverage. Well, you can do the same thing with other people's platforms, right? If you want to be on a show as big as Oprah's, you can build that show, or you can just get on Oprah's show. And I look at it as it's a whole lot easier to leverage other people's platforms, right? Example here, right? I got exposure to your entire audience. You're going to do all the hard work. You're going to do the promotion. I just got to sit here and answer questions. The return on investment, you get more out, you put less in. And really, this came from inbound marketing. That's my background. And 15 years ago, the hack was to use guest blogging. So instead of writing a blog on your own site, put it on Huffington Post, Wall Street Journal, get it seen by those people, get the know, like, and trust, get the authority. And so in 2014, I hypothesized that, you could use podcast interviews the same way. Blogs were starting to die. They didn't work nearly as well. And I tested it, and I was shocked that it was converting 25 times better than the blog. And at first I thought, it's got to be a niche. It's got to be a personality. Everybody loves you, but that's why it converts. And I kept testing that, and no, it really worked. I had just sold a business. I didn't really want to start a new one. So I put this cheesy PDF book together, and I'd give that to people when they asked the questions. And then they said, well, you should do a video course. And so I did that. I never took it out of beta because it sold real well, but people weren't getting results with it. You could see the back end that they just weren't getting through it. And the people that were honest with me said, you've given me the cookbook, you gave me the videos, I don't want to be the chef. Let me be the guest, you take care of all the rest. So we started to beta test it in 2015, took it out of beta in 2016, and now Interview Valet is a team of 18, all geographically remote, and we serve about 100 clients at a time.
Love it. And so let's go a little bit behind the scenes of your own process. We have in our audience a lot of people. There are online coaches, creators, speakers, even potential podcasters, or people that are aspiring to maybe, get invited on different shows, but they don't know how, right? Like everybody thinks, and me included. So I started this show about a year and about 2 months ago. Number one was, okay, I'm going to grow my platform. And now it kind of, I guess, and you correct me if I'm wrong, it may seem a little bit easier to pitch myself on other shows if I do an interview swap. But for people that don't have a show, how would someone come up with, everybody would like to go on Pat Flynn's show. Everybody would like to go on Grant Cardone's podcast. Everybody would like to go on Gary Vee. How do people, like somebody that's brand new right now, they're just in the process of, becoming the speaker or becoming an author or whatever. How are they coming up with the shows that kind of make sense for them? And also to be realistic, right? Like people have to understand, like, hey, you're not going to be able to get on Gary Vee's show unless you are a certain level, right?
Yeah, and there's two questions there. First one is, how do you pick the shows?
Yeah.
Right? So the first thing is, bigger is not better. Bigger is just bigger. Better is better. So you want to look at the show that has the best audience for you. The whole idea there's more fish in the ocean than there are in a barrel. If you can find a barrel of fish, go there every time. So try to find the podcast that has your ideal audience. Look at the podcast. Has it been around a while? Most podcasts die within the first 10 episodes. You don't want to be on episode number 7 and they stop paying their hosting bill at episode number 8. So look at the podcast, but then there's other things, and our algorithm looks at 4 things. So there's the podcast, the website. So every one of these podcast interviews should be sending you a backlink, which is so important for SEO value, getting found online. Third thing to look at is the reach. So are they promoting this on social media? Are they promoting it to their email list? Because that's so powerful. You'll start to get seen by people that don't even listen to podcasts. And then finally, experience with previous guests. So we've got advantage on that. We see that, but I'll tell you what it is. It's the podcasts that convert the best are the ones like this, where it's an actual conversation. When it's, asking the same 5 questions, you never get to tell your story. So that's how to pick the podcasts. And then how to get on them. Put yourself in the podcast host's shoes right now. Who do you want to have on? You want to have your friends of friends, and people you want to be your friends, right?
I love this. You shared this yesterday, and this was just when I heard it, I had my notes. But yeah, keep going.
So with that, it's like, so nowhere in there does it say a creepy pitch, right? So first of all, if you know somebody that's a podcaster, ask them. Even Broadway shows start off Broadway, right? Professional actors don't do the first one on Broadway. So you can warm up, right? The second one is ask people. If they know a podcaster, if they can give you a introduction, that's golden, right? And really, that's what we do at Interview Valet. We know the podcasters. We're vouching for the guest. We're pitching them, so it's more of a friend of a friend.
Yeah.
The third thing is be someone they want to be friends with, right? So how do you build friends? How do you build a relationship? Gary Vee talks about, jab, 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 right hook. I always say serve, 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 ask. And most of the time it's them asking you to be on the podcast. So we're all vain. We listen for our own name. Retweet their stuff. Promote the episode. Leave them a rating and review. Podcasters look at that. Do things for them. And then when you reach out to serve. Reach out to say, I've listened to the podcast. I liked this episode. I think I could add value to your audience by doing this, right? Not, I've got a new book to pitch and I would like to abuse your audience. No. Just talk about what you could add to the audience. And then I always tell people, your goal of being on a podcast is to make the host look like a genius for introducing you to them, the audience, right?
That's really powerful.
Yeah, you don't have to promote yourself. If you do a good job, the host will promote you better than you ever could.
No, and that's so true. So then, all right, now you gave a really good strategy, great strategy for people to kind of look, how do they ask for those numbers? Like, how do somebody that's just starting out will pitch a podcast host and say, hey, can you share with me how big is your email list? How many listeners you get a month? How do you act?
That's a touchy question. It's like asking a woman her weight. It's just rude, and they're probably going to lie.
Okay.
Right? So I don't say podcasters lie. I'll tell you I can bench press 350.
Okay.
I'm not lying. You were thinking pounds, I was thinking grams, right? So when you ask download numbers, you got to take it with a grain of salt because they're not publicly available. And really, it really doesn't matter, right? You can look at things like how many episodes do they have? How many comments do they have? How many ratings and reviews? Look in Chartable and, see where they are in there. And you can get a pretty good sense of where they stack up. What kind of guests have they had before? I always say, bigger is not better. I was on a podcast early on, and it's when I was selling the course, the online course. And I was on a podcast that had 40,000 downloads per episode. And I thought, oh, this is great.
It's going to kill it.
It's going to kill it. I'm retiring after this. From there, I got about 24 sales. And I was happy. I was thrilled to be there. Shortly after, I was on a podcast and it came up in conversation that the podcast got about 150 downloads per episode. I got 100 sales off of that one. And so you look at that and you say, there's more fish in the ocean than there are in a barrel. Well, it's a whole lot of work to go out in the ocean. I'll just go to the barrel every time.
I know, right? So no, this is super, super great to know because, and I've had this situation where I've had guests with like a huge brand, and then I was trying to run some ads to get some more exposure against their own audience. But then I've had, and they didn't perform as well as I thought, right? So it's almost the same thing, thinking that bigger is better, but a lot of times it's not.
Right.
All right, cool. So now we know how to kind of vet the podcast. We know how to pitch them. Let's say we land the interview. How a person that maybe has never done an interview before, has never been a guest on a show, how are they, what's your formula of, being positioned as the expert on that? Are you sending the podcast host before, maybe almost like a speaker kit, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, remember that podcast hosts, by and large, aren't trained journalists. So if you send them a 20-page media kit, they're going to look at it on their phone and they're going to say no, right? You've got to make it easy for them. So we always talk about a one-page press kit, one-page pitch page, whatever you want to call it. Make it easy for them. So, I'll share mine with you. And it's basically, here's 2 pictures that you can use, so you don't have to go to Google Image and figure out which one to use. Here's the logo for my book. Here's the logo for the company.
Make it easier for them to share whatever.
Yeah, here's the social media. So they don't have to figure out, well, which Tom Schwab is this? Put different interview topics you have, right? Give them a place to go, things to talk about. Give a little bit of a bio, but also give a third-person bio. In the industry, it's called a rip and read. Third person, so that if somebody, don't leave it up to them on how they're going to introduce you. Give them the idea, and they may change it, but just don't leave it up to fate.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so then now they know how to position themselves on that interview. Let's say you do the interview, or actually no, let's talk about this because I think, now you have some great insights on how to conduct a great interview or how to respond to questions to, one, maybe not make them too long, maybe not be boring as a guest, or like how do you advise your clients to act on an interview?
It's more of a conversation. Think of it that way. If you think of it as an interview, it gets really tense. It's like, a job interview. No, this is a conversation. We'd be talking about the same things if we were sitting down at Denny's having breakfast, or if we're at the bar having a beer, right? So I think it's easier if you have the video on or you're in the same place, right? Because you can pick up those visual cues. But I always tell people, answer the question fully, but leave room for a follow-up question. We've worked with people that have, television. They're used to being on, national news 3 times a week, but they can do everything in 2 or 3 minutes. Well, you can't give those same answers on a podcast. It's got to be a longer discussion.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to give an answer that can help the audience understand, what was the purpose of the question and how they can navigate through that. But also at the same time, if like the way that we just did it now, I asked you like how they should be positioned, but then that led me to, all right, but how they should answer a question. And it's like one after another, and leave room, I guess, for a follow-up, like you said.
Exactly. The other thing too is, remember, people are listening to this. 70% of podcast interviews are listened to sped up. So make sure that when you're answering the question, that you tell stories. Don't give a lot of numbers. It's not like a PowerPoint presentation where I can point toward the graph. Another thing is to pace yourself just like the host. If the host is a slow talker, you talk the same way. If they're a fast talker, talk the same way, because it's your house, it's your rules. When people listen to you, they're used to listen to you. So if I sound like a chipmunk, or I sound so slow that I'm boring, I'm going to sound the one that's wrong. So follow the lead of the host.
This is a great advice. I think a lot of I would probably quote you on this and send it to all my guests to kind of get the whole feeling of, because I have my own way of conducting an interview, and then some people come with their, and that's why even at the beginning of this interview I said, Tom, just intro and outro, it's recorded separately, so we don't, like, it doesn't sound awkward when I just hit record and we jump straight into questions. So no, I love that. All right, perfect. So now someone gets their interview, they're positioned as as an expert, what's the perfect way to use that interview, regardless if it's video or audio? Are they using that to pitch themselves on another show because now they have the proof of being on one podcast? What's the process after that?
So you can leverage one into another. That's one way to do it. And a great way is at the end of the podcast interview, say, I am so happy. Thank you. I'm honored to be on your show. If you know anybody else that I could add value to their audience, I would be honored with an introduction, right? Podcasters know podcasters. If you did a good job and you ask that question and you get 2 introductions, they told 2 friends and so on, your dance card will be filled pretty quickly.
This is so good.
But the other thing is repurposing the interview. I am amazed. Okay, I'm appalled at the number of guests that don't promote the episode afterwards. It's like, why would you go on a great platform, give a great interview, and never just tell anybody about it? So when it comes out, most hosts will tell you about it. So promote it. If you want to get more interviews, be known as a good guest. And most hosts will let you repurpose the content, right? If we talk for 20 minutes, I'll probably say something smart for 1 minute of that. Well, I'm going to take that 1 minute, put some B-roll footage of you and I behind it, and I'll put it up there. Maybe I'll take a transcription of it, have somebody else clean it up and make a blog out of it. We actually did a study. Well, it was a challenge that I did at our company. Things were slow in December, right? The holidays. I said, how much content can you get out of one of my interviews? And they were able to get a month's worth of content out of one podcast interview. So from leveraging things, think about it. You could spend a lot of time doing a lot of podcast interviews, or you could do some great podcast interviews and just repurpose that content.
I love it. No, and that's so true, right? Like you could have just said, well, it's just a slow month, but no, you actually used what you've had already and just repurpose it. Do you have a platform that you use for doing that, or is it just mainly your team that does it?
We've got a team. So I try to do most of the stuff internal. Sometimes we'll reach out to it. Temi.com we always use for the transcriptions. 10 cents a minute. I can't have anybody do it cheaper than that. And then really, we'll put that content up wherever our clients are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tom, so what we do every time with every guest is we like to give the audience 2 action tasks. One thing that they can do at the end of this interview. So whatever, if they're listening or watching this episode on any platform, something that they can do, like they pause the interview and they say, okay, now I'm going to go and implement this. And then a long term, something that they can do for the next 6 months to a year to kind of improve their chances of being booked on other shows. So what's your favorite thing for someone that they can do right at the end of this?
Number 1, you are an expert. People struggle with this. They're like, well, I don't know if I'm ready to be on a podcast interview. You're an expert, right? So if you look at the legal definition of an expert, it's somebody by their training, by their knowledge, by their experience, knows more than the average person. The problem is what's ordinary to you is amazing to other people. So in your business, you're spending 60 hours a week in that. You got expertise in that. If you messed up in your life, okay, I've got lots of expertise of how to mess up, right? And I can share that. Your opinion. I am the world-renowned expert on my opinion, right? So you are an expert. Realize that you've got value to give people. And so I would say that's the first thing, just realize that you can be a podcast guest. The second thing, over the next 30 or 60 days, go find 5 podcasts. Don't find 100, just find 5 that you would think, I'd be a great guest on here. And like you said, it's not the Tim Ferriss show. Start realistically. Start at not even the minor leagues. Start at the T-ball leagues, right? Get used to it. Get comfortable on camera. Get comfortable with the microphone. Use those as proof sources, because, like you said, often podcasters won't invite you on if they haven't heard you before, right? They're not going to test you out on their audience. So do that and just look at it step by step and think about it. If you find 5 podcasts in the next 60 days to be on, and then ask each one of them, hey, do you know any other podcasters? After 60 days, you'll be on another 10. Pretty soon, you're going to be so selective on podcasts that you're like, you'll be only only be on Tim Ferriss.
I love this strategy because you can use, it's one thing to do, of course, do a follow-up or, keep in touch with the podcast host. But then the moment that you are right there face-to-face, or even if it's through a Zoom call, whatever, that's the perfect place to ask if, and of course, you'll know if you did a great job
Right.
on the show. So I love it. So Tom, can you talk for a little bit about the book? I got it today, so thank you for this. How what's in the book? How can people get it? Where should they go to get a copy of it?
Okay, so with that, the book is Podcast Guest Profits: How to Grow Your Business with a Targeted Interview Strategy. Everything we do is a system. There's no magic, there's no secret to this, right? It's a process.
Yeah.
I'm an engineer by degree, and I look at everything as a process. And those people that say they can't explain their business, it's probably because they don't understand it. And what we have done here over 6 years, over 10,000 different interviews, 500 different guests, we've come up with a process, and you can use it. You can follow this. It'll walk you straight through it. There's action steps at the back. We put the whole thing out there, and people said, well, why would you give away the secret sauce? And I'm like, first of all, there's no secret, right? I talk about it all the time. But if you read that and want to use it, God love you, go for it. But what our ideal clients, they look at it and say, that's a great cookbook. I want to be the guest. You take care of all the rest. So you can get it at Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, wherever good books are sold. But you know what? Go to interviewvalet.com and you can get a free copy right there, a digital download or a physical book. I just want to get the information out there to people.
I love it. And this is how it looks, guys. Of course, we'll put the link in the show notes below. So, Tom, anything that we haven't covered, anything that feel that it's valuable for the audience to be part of this process, or even to take this process and then maybe implement it to the next level, or whatever it is, something that maybe I have not asked?
Yeah, I think it's the overarching of why, right? Not the podcasting, but why do you need to do this, right? And I believe that the biggest problem we all have today is obscurity. There's thousands, there's millions of people that you could help that would be thrilled to give you money, big money for that help. The biggest problem is they don't know you exist. And this idea of breaking through the noise is laughable, right? It's like yelling at a concert. We're increasing the noise. We're not being heard. So the only thing standing between you and helping people and them rewarding you is this obscurity. So find a way to get out there, to get connected, to get introduced. Could be to come in like conferences like this where we're introducing one friend to another. But to me, it's a lot more scalable to do it through podcast interviews. So the world needs to know what you understand, right? What's ordinary to you is amazing to other people. Go ahead and share that with the world. Be as a podcast host, as a podcast guest, but people need to know that, and they will reward you handsomely for it.
Awesome, I love it. Oh, and then by the way, before we wrap this up, yesterday you talked about this, this trend of the whole coronavirus and all the rest. It's happening, and it's obviously affecting a lot of people. And me and you were talking right before this interview. A lot of conferences, like in-person conferences, are getting canceled because of it. And you said something really important. You said now it's the perfect time to start looking for other shows, because you can connect to people online from all over the world without having to be face to face with them, and without avoiding all the travel things and all the rest. Can you talk for a little bit just about that?
Yeah, so I think we're in a new normal here, and I pray that it doesn't get this way, but if you look at where it's going in other countries, it's bound to happen. So the next 3 to 6 months, 1 to 2 quarters, people aren't going to be traveling as much. We're not going to have the opportunity for these conferences, but you still got to get in front of your ideal audience. And if anything, they're going to be the ultimate and captive audience, right? They're going to be sitting at home, listening to the podcast, searching the web, videos, all the rest of that. So find a way to connect with them. And what a great way to get out there when everybody else is pulling back and wondering what to do. You can get your message out there, be heard. And especially if you're addressing timely topics, this interview is a lot more timely now just because you added that. So I think there's great power in that. And there's no travel. level. You know, I joke around that I spoke at an event, probably 6 months ago, and I had to laugh at it. There were 75 people there. It was a great event. They had booze and they had hors d'oeuvres, right? But it took me an hour to drive there. I gave the presentation, hung around there for a little bit, and drove an hour back. And I had to laugh, and I told them, I'm thrilled to be here, but this is 4 hours of my life, and I'm talking to 75 people. You know, you go on a podcast interview, it's 30 or 45 minutes, and you're talking to thousands or tens of thousands, and you can share it with people. So to me, it's a lot more leverageable.
Love it. Well, Tom, again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Awesome interview. So guys, like I said, we'll put all the links for this. And then, by the way, if people need to connect with you personally, what's your favorite platform? Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is where I am most of the time. I would say I'm the only Tom Schwab from all of Kalamazoo, Michigan, so I'm easy to find.
Perfect. And of course, we'll put all the links in the description below.
Hey, podcast listeners, I want you to know that I really appreciate your attention and I don't take it lightly. That's why each month we pick a lucky winner and we give away books, mentorship, software, courses, iPads, and other cool stuff. The way to enter is go to clientacquisitionpodcast.com and sign up. You'll get all the details there. Talk to you guys soon. Take care.